Japan's Lost Underwater City, a modern Atlantis. The NEXION documentary, what if the sea concealed a city older than the pyramids, blocks, terraces, stairways lying just below the waves, silent and patient for millennia? Off a small Japanese island, divers found formations that looked like terraces, roads, and a giant stepped platform. A place some call a lost city, others call a natural trick of stone and time. Tonight, NEXION goes down into that debate. Discovery, science, and the human hunger to find civilization beneath the waves. Is this a modern Atlantis or nature's illusion? Let's find out. Chapter 1, The Discovery That Stirred the World. The story begins with a simple dive. In 1986 and later in the 1990s, divers exploring the waters off Yonaguni, a small island in Japan's Ryukyu chain, filmed remarkable stepped platforms near vertical walls and massive flat terraces lying at shallow depth. The photos were dramatic: straight edges, right angles, and staircases seemingly carved into the rock. Word spread fast, local guides, enthusiasts, and eventually mainstream media began referring to the site as an underwater ruin, a pyramid, even a lost city. The images inspired documentaries, books, and heated debates about what lay beneath. Some voices, including prominent local geologist Masaki Kimura, argued passionately that these features were shaped or altered by humans in a prehistoric era when sea level was lower. Others urged caution, noting similar stepped rock formations on land and pointing to natural processes that fracture and erode sandstone into angular shapes. The clash of expert opinion turned Yonaguni from a diving curiosity into a scientific Rorschach. People saw what their hopes or training inclined them to see. Chapter 2, The Two Camps, Archaeology versus Geology. On one side are archaeologists and local proponents who emphasize the apparent regularity of terraces. Terraces with near 90 corners and platforms that fit human scale. They point to subtle carvings and linear features that resemble roadways or bones. For them, the argument is tantalizing. If humans once shaped these stones, they were building with intent long before known civilizations in the region and were later submerged by rising seas or tectonics. On the other side, several geologists explain those same shapes by bedding planes and natural jointing in sedimentary rock. Sandstone and other layered rocks often fracture along plains, producing steps and terraces. Wave abrasion and seismic activity can enhance these shapes and over tens of thousands of years, carve distinct right angles into bedrock. Field studies have documented comparable formations onshore and elsewhere that are clearly natural, reinforcing skepticism about a built origin. The scientific consensus overall leans toward natural origins, while acknowledging puzzles in the site's appearance. Chapter 3, Reading the Rock, What Geology Shows. To know whether people carved the seafloor, experts examine the rock at multiple scales: bedding, joint patterns, tool marks, and a spatial context. Sandstones often display parallel bedding planes and sets of natural joints, fractures that tend to break rock into blocky rectangular slabs. In some cases, currents and repeated wave action polish these surfaces into flat platforms and create grooves that can look eerily like lanes or roads. Detailed topographic and petrographic studies in recent years have argued that many of the Yonaguni features match natural erosion and jointing patterns. A 2019 topographic analysis and geological field investigations of outcrops on Yonaguni concluded that the terrace-like features could arise from natural processes acting on the island's rock strata, while recognizing how convincing the built appearance can be at first glance. At the same time, geological explanations have limits. Not every feature can be accounted for by simple erosion, and some localized smoothing or what appear to be carved surfaces invite closer archaeological scrutiny. Science advances by testing competing interpretations, and the most powerful evidence for ancient human work would be unambiguous artifacts, hearths, pottery, or tools in a secure archaeological context. To date, such incontrovertible finds at the submerged terraces remain contested or absent. Chapter 4, When the Sea Rose, Prehistoric Coastlines and Human Habitation. Sea level has not been constant. During the last ice age, Huge volumes of water were locked in polar ice, and coastlines lay far seaward of today's shores. As the climate warmed, ice melted, and oceans rose in pulses and stages, inundating coastal landscapes and transforming shorelines into seabed. Across Japan, archaeologists have found submerged Jomon period sites roughly 14,000 to 2,300 years ago, and other coastal settlements now underwater after Holocene sea level rise. These discoveries confirm that people once inhabited places now submerged, and that submerged cultural landscapes can and do exist. That broader fact fuels interest in Yonaguni. If people lived along now drowned coasts, could they have carved structures later submerged by sea level rise or tectonic subsidence? The timeline matters. If a carved site were older than the last major post-glacial sea level rise, it would imply human engineering at a surprisingly early date. But establishing a human chronology requires datable artifacts or organic material sealed in stratigraphy, a challenge beneath waves and in rock. Chapter 5. The evidence for and against human work. Proponents for a man-made origin highlight features they say are unlikely to be natural: a broad, flat platform the size of a stadium, parallel roads, terrace steps of regular height, and what some divers interpreted as carved reliefs. These claims often lean on pattern recognition. The human brain is brilliant at recognizing regular geometry and projecting intention. Skeptics counter with field observations, comparative geology, and the lack of securely dated artifacts. They note that wave-cut platforms, jointed bedding, and selective erosion can produce remarkable regularity, especially in rock that fractures along systematic planes. Furthermore, the region is tectonically active. Earthquakes can rearrange rock, tipping slabs into new positions that mimic man-made terraces. The debate thus reduces to whether observed regularities are beyond what we should expect from nature, given local geology, or are within the expected range of natural processes. To resolve the dispute, teams need systematic mapping, stratigraphic sampling, and direct dating tasks, complicated by the site's shallow marine setting, biofouling, and modern human activity. The data so far is intriguing but unresolved. If you love investigations like this, subscribe to NEXION. We'll take you deeper into mysteries, evidence, and the real science behind the headline. Drop a comment. Do you think Yonaguni is man-made or natural? Vote and explain below. Chapter 6. Underwater Archaeology. Methods and Limits. Underwater archaeology borrows methods from land archaeology but adds complicated logistics: ROVs, submersibles, sediment coring, photogrammetry, and precise GPS referenced to sea level. Researchers record 3D models of features, collect small samples for radiocarbon or luminescence dating, and search for cultural debris, pottery shards, worked stone, or human remains. But such finds must be contextualized. A shard lying on a terrace could have been transported by currents or modern activity. One practical problem at Yonaguni and similar sites is the lack of extensive, stratified sediment deposits that often preserve artifacts on land. The rock platform itself provides little sedimentary context, so archaeologists favor targeted sediment cores in sheltered hollows or gullies that might contain buried cultural material. Even then, contamination, bioturbation, and modern drift can complicate interpretation. The best case for ancient human occupation underwater comes from securely dated artifacts and STU, something like pottery layers sealed beneath sediment or hearths preserved by rapid burial. For Yonaguni, such data remain elusive. That is the heart of the scientific caution. Chapter 7. The Allure of Atlantis. Why the story captivates. Human imagination adores lost places. Atlantis is a cultural metaphor for lost knowledge and vanished civilizations. When divers present terraces and steps, it is tempting emotionally and narratively to stitch them into a story of an ancient, advanced culture submerged in an apocalypse of rising seas. Such narratives sell books, documentaries, and clicks. But science requires more than a good story. The Yonaguni debate illuminates how archaeology must resist wishful thinking by demanding reproducible evidence, independent verification, and transparent methodology. That does not make the subject less compelling. Than the contrary, Mysterious places demand careful study, because they can either reveal astonishing human skill or teach us about Earth's powerful natural processes. Chapter 8. Comparative cases, submerged sites around the world. Yonaguni is not unique in inspiring Atlantis speculation. From the submerged Roman Bay of Baia, near Naples, to Paleolithic landscapes off Japan, human societies have left traces, now underwater. Systematic surveys off coasts in Europe, Asia, and North America reveal shell middens, prehistoric roads, and even buried forests preserved and peat. Each example shows how sea level change and coastal dynamics rework human landscapes. Comparative study helps by mapping multiple drowned sites with solid stratigraphic data. Archaeologists learn the signatures of real human occupation underwater. Those signatures calibrate expectations and provide templates for what to look for at Yonaguni artifacts, hearths, microstratigraphy, and human-made tools. Chapter 9. New Science, High Resolution, Mapping, and Geophysics. Modern oceanography gives researchers new ways to test hypotheses. Multi-beam sonar, sub-bottom profilers, and bathymetric LiDAR build centimeter-scale maps of the seafloor. These tools reveal subtle terraces, linear features, and buried stratigraphy, invisible to the diver's eye. Geophysical surveys can detect anomalies consistent with voids or sediment packages that might contain cultural deposits. In the last decade, reanalysis of the Yonaguni area using digital elevation models and field studies argued that the formation patterns fit natural erosion and jointing. But more dense mapping, higher resolution sampling, and interdisciplinary teams, combining geologists, archaeologists, and ocean engineers, can push the debate forward. At heart, better data reduces ambiguity. Chapter Sure. Cultural Context. Jomon remote prehistory, and the possibility of coastal builders. The islands of Japan have a long human history. The Jomon period saw sophisticated hunter-gatherer societies with pottery, shell middens, and complex coastal economies. Along the west coast of Japan and other places, submerged Jomon sites attest that people lived along ancient shorelines, now underwater. But hypothesizing complex stone architecture at Yonaguni implies a scale and type of construction not otherwise documented in the region for that period. That said, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Sea level shifts erased many coastal records. If a seafaring or coastal people developed heavy stoneworks that were subsequently submerged and dismantled, we might lack surviving traces elsewhere. This uncertainty is why rigorous, well-funded fieldwork matters more than confident headlines. Chapter 11. Voices from the Island, Local Memory and Modern Identity. Local communities respond to such discoveries in complex ways. For Yonaguni Islanders, the formations are both a curiosity and an economic opportunity. Dive tourism, cultural identity, and conservation debates swirl together. For many islanders, the underwater features belong to a living landscape, a heritage that may or may not tie to deep prehistory, but that certainly shapes local sense of place. Responsible research requires working with local stakeholders, supporting sustainable tourism, protecting fragile marine habitats, and making sure scientific results are communicated clearly and respectfully. Science done in isolation can drive false narratives. Science done with community collaboration builds long-term stewardship. Chapter 12. The Ethics of Exploration and the Risk of Exploitation. As interest grows, so does pressure. More divers, unmapped anchors, and commercial plans can damage fragile surfaces and marine life. If a site is archaeological, unauthorized disturbance is theft. If it is a natural wonder, it still deserves protection. Moreover, deep claims of ancient civilization can fuel pseudoscience and sensationalism that dim real scientific debate. Ethical exploration balances curiosity and protection. Systematic documentation before collection. Clear permitting and long-term conservation plans. International examples show the value of protective regulations, marine heritage designations, and collaborative research frameworks. Yonaguni, whether nature's art or human hands, asks us to protect the seafloor as a shared heritage. Chapter 13. What would proof look like? Conclusive evidence for human construction would include insight to datable artifacts, worked stone with unambiguous tool marks, hearths or buried organic layers yielding consistent radiocarbon dates, and stratigraphy, showing human occupation predating even a single securely contextualized pottery shard sealed beneath a datable layer would transform the interpretation. Conclusive evidence for a natural origin would be a comprehensive stratigraphic and petrographic record that demonstrates bedding, jointing, and erosional history fully consistent with the observed geometry and without cultural material. The search for truth therefore proceeds on two fronts: more data and stricter context. Chapter 14, the wider lesson: science, mystery, and humility. Yonaguni is a microcosm of scientific culture: strong human curiosity, rapid media narratives, contested evidence, and gradual accumulation of data. The right approach is neither cynically dismissive nor instantly credulous. It is patient, empirical, and willing to change with new evidence. Whether Yonaguni is best explained as a natural wonder or as traces of ancient builders, the deeper story is the same. Our planet's surface changes on human timescales. Cultures are fragile in the face of environmental change, and the sea preserves both nature's memory and our own vanishing footprints. If you found this investigation fascinating, subscribe to NEXION. We bring evidence, skepticism, and cinematic storytelling to mysteries like this. Tell us in the comments, do you think Yonaguni is man-made, natural, or partly both? We'll feature thoughtful replies in our next documentary. Dive deeper with the links in the description. This was Japan's Lost Underwater City, a Modern Atlantis, a NEXION documentary.